So these are the 5 worst sources of protein that I would recommend you steer clear of as much as possible. Number 1 is fake meat, also known as faux meat. Now, there are some that are better than others, but most of them are heavily processed. Let me show you. I've got some corn cocktail sausages here, and normally cocktail sausages are not the best anyway. They are full of emulsifiers and flavor enhancers. So I'm not saying this is worse than regular cocktail sausages, but they're not any better. And that's what I think a lot of plant-based alternative meats are banking on, the fact that yes, they have less saturated fat, yes, they don't contain any meat, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are good sources of protein. I fully disagree with this idea that just because it has less salt and less saturated fat makes it any better. We want these out of our diet. And if I'm just reading through the ingredients of this particular brand, I'm not going to name, but you can probably see it on the camera. You've got mycoprotein, which itself is actually quite processed. So I won't go into that. That's a type of mushroom-based protein that is highly, highly concentrated. But this has got textured wheat protein, stabilizer. This has got free-range egg white in, actually. So this isn't vegan. Rapeseed oil, rusk. They've got all sorts of vitamins that are added to this. Casein, calcium alginate. There are probably about 30 different ingredients here, many of which I can't actually recognize properly. Roasted barley malt extract, natural caramelized sugar. There's just so many ingredients here, and we know that we want to be deprocessing our diet as much as possible. So this is definitely something that I would recommend you steer clear of, despite the health halos that you find on the front of the packet. High in protein, low in saturated fat, source of fiber. Do not listen to any of these claims. They're complete rubbish. We want to be removing processed foods from our diet as much as possible. Look at the relationship between ultra-processed foods and health. There is a clear relationship between higher intake of ultra-processed foods and type 2 diabetes, obesity, anxiety, mental health effects, depression, poor sleep, all cause mortality. This is a paper from the BMJ that showed this relationship in very clear detail. Now, there is a bit of murkiness here. There isn't always like a clear-cut association, but I'm a pragmatist and I want to make sure that we are removing these foods as much as possible and leaning into the foods that we know are healthful for us. So if that means going for a whole unprocessed chicken versus this, I would actually opt for that. I'm not on this bandwagon of plant-based by any means necessary, because I think that's completely erroneous and not evidence-based whatsoever. So remove fake meats from your diet. Trust me, you'll be doing yourself a favor. If on the occasion you want to try something that resembles a kebab and you are vegan for whatever reason, I can understand that, but that's not a daily staple. That is very much a luxury item. Number 2, for the meat eaters, you want to remove processed meats. So these are things like what these are actually mimicking: ham, sausages, bacon, salami, roast turkey, all these different processed meats that have got a lot of additives to them to preserve them and keep them fresher for longer. These are actually making it even less healthy for you. A lot of these nitrites and nitrates that are added to these products convert into nitroso compounds. They're also found to have heterocyclic amines. Now, these are types of byproducts that are formed with high temperature cooking. And when you're exposing these proteins to high temperature cooking, they create different amines. Amines comes from amino acids, and this is the toxic inflammation producing chemicals that are a byproduct of cooking meat at high temperature, which is why, again, in the same vein, if you want to enjoy barbecue meats, fine, but do that as a luxury, not as a daily or weekly thing that you do. Something that you want to enjoy once in a while, once a month perhaps, but not more than that. You don't want to be doing it multiple times a week. There is a clear risk with processed meats and a high risk of colon and rectal cancer. So please make sure that you're removing processed meats as much as possible from your diet. Do not lean into the carnivore sort of things, which is, meat at any opportunity, including processed meats. Try and remove processed meats as much as possible. They might be high in protein, but they're not good for your overall health. Number 3, protein bars. This is one of my pet peeves because I see these bars every time I go to the gym. They're really, really heavily marketed. They are constantly shown. The first thing I do when I leave the gym, and most people are probably thinking, where am I going to get my protein? Because I've just done a heavy lift or I've done a heavy set. I need to get protein in straight away. First of all, there was this sort of a view that you have an anabolic window, i.e. a small period of time whereby you need to consume protein to maximize the gains from your workout. And that used to be thought of like, the first 60 to 90 minutes. Actually, it's more like an anabolic garage, like, a massive window of opportunity to get your protein in. As long as you're getting protein in the first 12 hours, you'll be fine. As long as you're not doing a fast straight after doing a heavy workout that is strength training, squats, upper body, whatever it might be, you're not going to lose out on those gains by ensuring that you're having your protein within that 12-hour window. These bars are sold as a very convenient option to get your protein in. Let me show you. So this, I'm not going to name the brand, but you can probably recognize it, is proudly showing 20 grams of protein, which is a lot of protein. That's absolutely fine. But again, along the same line of ultra-processed foods, gosh, there are so many different ingredients in this. There's a protein blend of caseinate, whey protein, milk protein. That's not bad. But you've got sweeteners, maltitol, cocoa butter, soy lecithins, cocoa mass, bovine collagen hydroxylate, more sweeteners, maltitol, humectant, glycerol. The list goes on. Within this very small product here, we have, again, another 20 or 30 different ingredients. There's 3 or 4 different types of protein in here. I don't know why they've got so many different types of protein. You've got soy protein, you've got milk protein, you have collagen in here, I believe. There's just so many things going on in this bar, and there doesn't really need to be. You can get your protein from a whole unprocessed meal within 12 hours. That's one way in which you can do it. Or you can create your own very simple protein shake. Hemp seeds, peanut butter, a very simple unprocessed protein shake that I'll talk about in a second. These are full of emulsifiers. A lot of them are high in sugar, and the ones that are not high in sugar or proudly say no sugar are loaded with emulsifiers and sweeteners as well, which may not be great for your gut. In fact, a lot of people who eat these kind of products have gut issues, unfortunately, that lead to them having worse outcomes than if they're just, opted to fast for a little bit longer, wait until they get to their own kitchen, or wait till they have a proper meal, whether that's a lunch or something else that you can build up from supermarket items. So be really, really careful about protein bars. I don't think there's any space for them in the diet whatsoever. Just get them out of your diet. Just a quick one. If you're enjoying this content, you will love my mini series on inflammation. I go through the different types of foods that you should be having, what inflammation actually is, plus lifestyle practices to reduce inflammation. You can get it for free right now in the link in the caption below. Back to the podcast. The 4th thing are snacks and sweets with added protein. I'm noticing a trend here. There are flapjacks. There are original bars like Mars bars and Snicker bars with protein or high protein versions of the same product. I've got one here. This is a very popular brand of flapjack with added protein now. This has got 9 grams of plant-based protein. It again says a source of fiber. It is proudly saying that it's got oats, which, lower cholesterol apparently, probably not the oats that they're using. And if I'm just reading the ingredients, not as bad as these ingredients, but still I'm counting at least 15. So we've got emulsifiers, lecithins, vegetable oils, soy flour, sugar, salt. What else have we got here? Soya protein, isolate, tapioca, rice syrup. There is just a lot going on here, and there really doesn't need to be. A flapjack can simply be dates, rolled oats, blended together, pressed together. And if you wanted to add a bit of protein, an unflavored whey protein or an unflavored soy protein with a little bit of spices, maybe cinnamon. That's all you need. It should just be 3 or 4 ingredients if you wanted to create a high protein flapjack. If I had it my way, I would add peanut butter and hemp seeds because they are fantastic sources of really good quality protein that are very high in fiber without having to, add chicory root or whatever else they've added to this to add the claim of high fiber. So be really careful about these added protein, health halo sweets and bars because they're not healthy for you, despite the sort of marketing and the hype around them. And the fifth thing are low quality protein powders. Now, I struggle to find a high quality protein powder. A lot of protein powders subscribe to the same thinking as the bars and the sweets with added protein. They're ultra processed. They have lots of added sugars and sweeteners. Again, emulsifiers. Many people who have started on protein powders then go on to develop digestive issues. Sometimes immediately, a lot of the times later on down the road. And that is for both animal-based protein, so whey protein, milk-based protein, and even plant-based proteins as well, because the common denominator between them two are the emulsifiers and the sweeteners that are loaded in these products. And as a daily product, this means that you are consuming ultra-processed food every single day, and that's not a good place to be in. So be really careful about the types of protein powders that you're consuming. How I choose a quality protein powder, I look for no added sugar or no added sweeteners, minimal ingredients, an organic protein source, particularly if you're going for an animal-based protein powder. So if you are going to go for whey, I personally can't tolerate whey, but you want to go for organic grass-fed whey-based protein. The other thing, which is a bonus, which most protein powders do not do, is third-party testing for contaminants. Now, this is, I think, a murky area within a lot of the wellness industry, if I'm honest, and supplementation as well. Contaminants are a real big thing. It's not just heavy metals, which is obviously very scary. It's also mycotoxins, molds, a lot of different issues along the supply chain that can contaminate your product. And if you are doing this as a daily supplement that a lot of these products are marketed for, then that's something you really want to be careful about as well. The kind of protein powders that I would go for would be a pea protein or soy-based protein from an organic source, and with minimal ingredients, less than 3 or 4. Whey-based is probably easier to find with those criteria because it's usually just one ingredient that's unflavored. That does mean that you have to add flavoring to it. A very simple protein shake that I make myself is just water, cinnamon, a good dose of cinnamon, like half a teaspoon, a little bit of raw honey if you want that extra sweetness, cacao, which is actually very high in proteins, around 30%. Hemp seeds, again, very high in all 9 essential amino acids. It's a very good plant-based protein source. Peanut butter, and then if you wanted to add extra protein from a whey or a vegan source, then opt for an unflavored vegan protein powder. That's the best way to get a protein powder. If you protein shake, and if you like to supplement your protein needs, but most of us can get our protein. And just by the by, you want at least 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight of protein per day. So as a 70 kilo man myself, around 75 kilos, I'm looking for around 120 grams of protein per day. Upwards of that is around 130. That's actually very, very reasonable to get in for most people. That's about 40 grams per meal, or 30 grams with a 30-gram snack in the middle of the day. It's very easy for me to get that protein requirement from whole foods rather than supplementing with bars and shakes. So where does meat fit in this equation? So I actually believe that you can have animal-based products in your diet every single week in moderation. So opting for things like poultry, eggs, a quality protein powder, and red meat a couple of times a week is something that I think is healthy and actually maybe healthful, because it's a very easy and absorbable way of getting your protein requirements. I'd opt for nutrient-dense cuts of meat, and I would look for lean cuts of meat as well. So saturated fat is definitely correlated with increase, or causative, I should say, with increased levels of LDL cholesterol that can put you at high risk of cardiovascular disease. This whole idea that you don't need to worry about cholesterol or you don't need to worry about saturated fat, I think, is deeply flawed. So you do want to be cognizant of the amount of saturated fats. It's very easy to overeat saturated fats from meat-based products. So opt for nutrient-dense and opt for lean cuts of meat. I tend to go for fish. That's my main source of animal-based proteins. And they have extra benefits with omega-3 fats and anti-inflammatory ingredients. Eggs and poultry is something that I also do have in my diet, and I do have a plant-based protein powder. But other than that, I don't really tend to have much red meat in my diet. There is some association with an increased risk of colon cancer, but I think that veers more towards processed meats rather than the lean red meats. It's very hard to decipher that causality from observational studies alone, which is what most people are relying on. The top healthiest sources of protein that I personally eat daily or multiple times a week are fermented dairy. So I'll have yogurt a couple of times a week. That has around 5 to 10 grams of protein per 100 grams. It's also related to improvements in bone health, reduction in risk of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease mortality. Probiotics are what is contained within fermented dairy, and they're also sources of calcium and phosphorus as well. So they are good sources of protein in your diet. I also have oily fish, like I said. There is a relationship with an improvement in mental well-being as well as brain health. And again, it's from the omega-3 fatty acid combination. I usually have around 2 to 3 servings per week personally, but 1 to 2 servings per week is shown in the literature to have those benefits to brain health. Shelled hemp seeds are one of my absolute favorites. It is stonkingly high in protein, around 30 to 32 grams per 100 grams of shelled hemp seeds. It's got a good amino acid profile. It also has the added benefits of minerals that are really good for inflammation and overall brain health. Magnesium, iron, zinc, these are wonderful ingredients. They also have polyunsaturated fatty acids and phenolics and flavonoid compounds that we know are great for oxidative stress. So shelled hemp seeds are some of my go-to as well. I really hope you've enjoyed listening to the worst types of proteins. I really hope you avoid those proteins as much as possible and lean into some of the ones that I personally enjoy. Think about the balance of proteins and your protein requirements. It's a very, very important molecule for health. It is the building block for all life, enzymes, hormones, as well as muscles. And lean into some of those other novel plant-based proteins like shelled hemp seeds, soy-based products. Those are really, really good for you as well. If you loved that episode, you'll love this episode where I teach you about how to choose the best type of yogurt every day and the health benefits that can help your well-being. You can check it out right here.